All right, then that was an exciting match. Did we just find the ECM counter?
I think that is a very strong ECM counter. A whole team, well, almost a whole team of Amarian chips, and nobody brings a ton of Amarian jammers. That's a team that is going to be very strong against ECM. And I think the reason they would have gone with Hams on the Legion is to make it strong against two other forms of EWAR as well. It means that they got resistance to tracking disruptors and resistance to newts, because you don't need cap to fire the missiles.
Yeah, very true. I was sort of doing a flurry of math during that break to try and figure out. I'm still not positive because I, for the life of me, can't remember how many points AAA fielded. But I think even if -10 had self-destructed when that last ship was left, the last Kitsune was left for Raiden, I think they still would have surpassed AAA and made it out of the bracket plus 20 billion ISK. Although, I'm sure there's someone with a calculator who can do this. This is the first time I've done paper math in like 5 years.
This is the first time I touch numbers.
But in the end, -10 decided not to self-destruct, and so they are now through, and we'll be seeing them tomorrow.
But I mean, so for the viewers that weren't really paying attention, Raiden actually offered to pay 20 billion for the other team to self-destruct.
Yeah, very true. I think that most likely the FC for the -10 team was desperately trying to do some math as well while flying his ship. But I think that's actually why there was the slight pause before the Kitsune exploded. So he has a calculator, I'm assuming, on hand. So he may know better than I do. Perhaps we'll see a post about what would have happened.
But I mean, wouldn't -10 also be selling their spot in the tournament?
Unless the Raiden FC had made some horrible math mistakes, then yes. Yeah. Which 20 billion, I wouldn't sell a tournament slot for that. The ability to get like -10, even if they win 1 or 2 more fights, could end up in a position where they get a guaranteed slot to next tournament. It's being able to fight tomorrow is a very good thing to have.
Yeah, and I kind of think if you're a team like -10 and you pull up a setup like this, you're also kind of telling people that you're not like a mid-range terrible team. That was a good setup. I mean, that was a very clever setup. Yeah. So you brought it up. So this was not really a traditional TQ Legion fit.
No. You do see them with the 100 MN afterburst sometimes using missiles, but no, most of the time you're going to see lasers on the Legion. Yeah,
the more and more I see -10's setups, the more and more they're one of my favorite teams to watch. They just have good setups, particularly the Saturday and Today setups. And also, as far as math goes, considering that they're in the same bracket as Against All Authorities, who in both of their two of their matches have brought extra points, I'm not really super confident in the ability of the teams in this bracket to do math.
This is basically the special ed bracket.
Yeah, it's Group C really for can't do math.
All right. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about this match because I really like this setup and it was fun to watch. But let's just go to CCP Sunset and the commentators.
Hey, I'm CCP Sunset back in the commentary booth. We still have Kill2 and Shadu in here. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Doing fine, yep.
There's been some pretty interesting matches so far. I know that there was a little bit of an issue with the one match that maybe we could talk about a little bit more.
Right, the Dark Side versus Against All Authorities, where there were a repeating ECM burst that went on. I mean, as the table as well said, look, you know, it affected both sides equally, and they were both Minmatar Rush set up as well, so you know, perhaps neither side certainly gained any advantage, and perhaps AAA used a little bit too much time talking in local rather than actually concentrating on getting in range and getting their guns on the right targets from the Dark Side team, which didn't seem like it was happening, because in fact that double ECM burst should have been a advantage to the AAA side team, because the Dark Side team had a Hugin, which was their range control, keeping those Sleipnirs and Cyclones out of range of that Scimitar. And it helped them, in fact, but they just weren't able to bounce on that, and they were perhaps too concerned about what was happening rather than keep on going regardless and go on for the target.
Yeah, I think it, like, obviously we're here part of the tournament team, and it would be ideal if we just all agreed 100% and everything was clear cut. But I really hate this kind of situation. It's like, I think everyone, I'm sure right now there's a 4-page thread and everyone will be really disappointed, and it does suck. It's really too bad. I mean, whenever this, and that's the thing though, it always happens. There's always some unexpected situation like this, and I think the thing to keep in mind is that it's really difficult to repair. Like because this was close to even, like, in a way, I think that's a problematic defense, because how is it even when no one knows how to react to what's going on? You know what I mean? It's totally unexpected. It's not within any of the defined tournament structure, so everyone's going to react to it differently, and in a way, that's not fair. But at the same time, the alternatives are really complicated. What do? Do you field new teams that are different setups and refund all their stuff? I mean, it's just such a nightmare that I don't know if there's a good solution, and that's too bad. But at the same time, when you're running live events and you're doing billions of matches, this kind of thing's definitely going to happen.
Sometimes you get a rampaging elephant in the studio, you know? These things happen.
I think the important part, though, always to remember by all the tournament teams is that you keep on going until they tell you not to in local.
Right.
So if you have a problem, you don't start typing and asking what's going on.
Right.
You're going to keep on going with the same strategy as you had beforehand.
I agree.
And you keep on going.
You always pretend nothing's wrong as long as you possibly can until...
And talk about it afterwards. Post about it until the cows are going home. I don't care. But, they certainly made a little bit of a mistake. They should have been able to actually benefit from that particular
Well, there's been a lot more matches than just this one today, so maybe we should keep things moving. We've also had lots and lots of questions on the forum thread, the Ask the Experts thread in the EVE Online forums in the Alliance Tournament section. So I wanted to bring some of them to you guys right now. There was a couple of questions directed specifically to Shedu, so I'm going to put you on the spot, I'm afraid. Right. We had a question about your particular thoughts about Artie Abaddon in PvP. I think there was maybe a little bit of history behind this question. Maybe you'll even recall who this might be from.
Well, there's several groups who use Artie Abaddons in TQ and on battles, as we heard from the devs as well talking about it. I mean, artillery is the type of a weapon on TQ that benefits from lag situations because you do more damage as your gun cycle range reduces. Drone Federation side uses Artie Abaddons a lot on DQ, whereas the Goon Swarm Federation side favors Maelstroms with the shield tank. Artie Abaddon benefits from having a higher EHP, more tank than a shield version at the Maelstrom. And in lag situation, it does perform better, but it is less maneuverable. It is lower ship, it responds lower. And with that particular setup, what NC moved away from the Goon setups to the Russian type setups, and they weren't successful because they forgot that you lose all maneuverability, and well, when you're running three fleets at the same time, well, you kind of get picked off one by one and die, unfortunately.
Not good, not good. There was another question that I really wanted to hear from both of you on as well, to do with Caldari. Do you believe that Caldari will ever prove viable in PvP? Seems like a slightly loaded question.
Yeah, a bit loaded. And also, I think a bit oversimplified. I think PvP viability is an interesting concept to begin with. I think what Shedu considers viable in PvP would be a lot different than what I would consider viable in PvP. It might be different than other people. So for me, I've always been happy with Caldari. I always I mentioned this earlier in the tournament, the idea of engageability, when a ship is appetizing for other gangs to fight. And I think other than jamming ships, which are viable in PvP on their own, Rooks and whatever else, Falcons, Caldari is super engageable. I love flying things like a Ferox or a Drake because people love to shoot them. But, there's plenty of viability for Caldari even in large-scale stuff, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've recently started to use the Tengu setup Thundercats, which have proven to be extremely viable in PvP. Also, Goon Swarm developed the smart bombing Nuding Scorpion, which also jams you, which wreaks havoc on most fleets. So I think there's plenty of viability on Caldari. And these things come and go as the game keeps on changing. We see more and more interesting setups pop up.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep trying to bring lots of questions to these guys from the forum. I think right now we'd be getting back to the studio, to CCP Soundwave. There's lots more to talk about before the next match. So back to the studio.
Thanks, guys. We're seeing a lot of questions come in for CCP Veritas, so let's just grab a few of those questions off the forums now. Million asks, can the server sense a 100% CPU load and switch to a lightly loader server? Like, can they switch dynamically, basically?
Switch between servers?
Yeah.
Not today,
All right.
but we are working towards that goal as well. So right now, we have the ability to what's called remap. Take a solar system offline and then bring it back online on a different machine.
All right.
But that disconnects everybody in the system and resets everything. It's really ungraceful to do during a fight because usually the losers just won't log back in.
Yeah.
And nobody's happy about that except for them. So no, not today, but we are working towards that goal as well.
That would be cool. Anyway, let's have many more questions like that. But let's just go to the Pandemic Legion versus Hydra Reloaded match. Let's have our predictions.
This is a very tough one to call, but I'm going to go with PL. Cheer for my guys.
Just because this is the first time he's ever said that Pandemic Legion is actually going to win their match, I'm going to go with Hydra Reloaded.
I see way too much of Pandemic Legion on TQ. I have to go with Hydra.
I've always said never bet against PL, but in this match, I think I will. I'm going to go with Hydra.